Welcome to the klutchkittengaming podcast, where I play an indie game for 5 hours and let you know whether or not it's worth your time and money. Hello and welcome everyone, this is James, also known as Clutch Kitten, and I am so excited because today I am not alone. I'm joined by my good friend Patches, who's joining us from sunny Southern California. Patches, welcome to the show. How are you doing on this fine morning?
Oh, so good, so good. The sun's out, the birds are chirping. You know, it's one of those Saturdays.
That sounds lovely. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, there's, some rain coming down, some birds trying to fly to their nests, but I'm incredibly jealous of you right now with the sunny weather. So just so everyone has kind of an idea of how I got to know Patches, I think I originally met you through Instagram, and
Mhm.
one of us liked each other's photos, and then I realized you not only are on Instagram doing gaming stuff, but you also do YouTube as well as your own podcast, Patches Plays Games. And so it just seemed to be a perfect fit for you to come on the show and talk about yourself, and so we can learn more about who you are. So I'm glad that we finally made this happen.
Cool, I'm so excited. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first question, super simple question. Who are you today? And you can answer this however you want. Who are you today, Patches?
Well, I am a small town Southern gal, moved to Southern California, and just trying to live my best life, trying to stay healthy and play some video games, you know? You know how it is.
I like
Enjoy
it.
my weather and enjoy good friends and good times. I moved out to LA about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, jeez. So weird to think about. And I worked in television for a little while because I went to film school and realized fairly early on that that was not the career I wanted. So still trying to figure it out, you know?
What was it about going to film school that was like, okay, this is not for me?
You know, it's weird, and I'm definitely overanalyzing this, I feel. But truth
Hmm.
be told, I feel like most of my life I've been constantly trying to impress other people and just impress, family and friends and colleagues, and I feel like I was doing a lot of this stuff early on just to fulfill other people's needs. And so I went to film school hoping it would really impress some people, and while I did have a pretty good time, it was still kind of miserable. And I'm not a regretful person.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here like, "Oh, I wish I would have done it differently," but, I do sometimes. I wish I would have done something different in college, and I just kinda came out here, and once I started working and saw how other people were living their lives and putting myself in their shoes thinking like, "Oh, I could have their job one day," and seeing that I didn't really want that and seeing that they seem miserable, I was like, "Man, I don't know if this is for me." And I just moved across the country.
What's it been like living in you've been there 2.5 years. That seems like it has to have been a huge change for you. Like
Oh, yeah.
picking up, moving across the country. Like what's been one of the coolest parts of it and what's been one of the most difficult?
I gotta say, like, I my whole family's back east. I mean, I'm the only person out west. I think I have some extended family in Arizona, but I'm sure if I showed up at their front door, they would have no idea who I am. But I miss my family. I miss my friends, of course, but I've made amazing friends out here who I can consider as family, and I've got an amazing support system out here as well. But I definitely miss my family.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, LA is just such a amazing place for opportunity, and you can't be bored. Like, there's just so much happening. There's so much going on. If I like this Saturday, like I just woke up and I'm like, I'm gonna go try something new today. I'm gonna go do something really weird and different. And I have that opportunity. There's just so much happening in LA, and I think it's a really interesting place to live in your mid 20s. It's a fascinating place, and it is definitely different than, the small town
Yeah.
I grew up in North Carolina, so, but yeah, I
Oh
miss
wow,
my
yeah.
family, I miss everybody back there, and I hope to see them this Christmas. I probably will get to see everybody, but, LA's fun. LA's super fun. Everyone should come to LA at least for a weekend and kinda experience the zoo that it is.
My sister went to school down there, like 10 or more years ago to college, and so I've been there down there a decent amount, but it's been a while, and there's definitely that pull to go back to the city and kind of check things out because that is such a cool opportunity, despite having terrible traffic and
Oh
probably
yeah.
really high cost of housing. Like you have all these different opportunities at your fingertips, and so
Uh-huh.
that's definitely something not to be dismissed at all. So that's really cool.
Yeah, you make it work.
So you mentioned gaming as being something that you really enjoy, despite kind of film school not being the thing for you. Where did your gaming journey start? Was it when you were 5? Was it when you were 12? Like what brought you into gaming and kind of what's kept you into gaming today?
So one of my earliest memories growing up was I feel like I was super young. I don't remember my sister being around just yet. My sister was born when I was 5. I remember for like a birthday or Christmas or something, my parents got me the Game Boy Color, and they I don't think they bought it for me yet. What they did was they showed me like an advertisement for it with all the different colors, and I remember it being like pink, blue, yellow, and like a gray or something like that.
Hmm.
And they were like, "Which color do you like?" And I was like, "I guess the pink." And so they went and got me the pink Game Boy Color, and I remember playing that for, oh my god, I mean, most of my childhood. And then sister came
Hmm.
along, and we got a Wii and a GameCube, and we played on my mom's Sega Genesis. Video games were just kind of like around growing up. It's not something that I necessarily was interested in. It was just something that was there. Like, my mom had the Sega Genesis, and my parents weren't, like, big gamers, like, they weren't, playing with us, they would just kinda
Hmm.
watch us. My sister and I were always playing Need for Speed Underground on the GameCube, we were playing Guitar
Nice.
Hero and Monkey Ball and stuff like that, and it was just kinda something that I was just born into, I'd say. I mean, I don't really have I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of the times people got into gaming because, like, there was an older relative or cousin or, some sort of sibling in the picture that was just kinda, like, playing, and so you start playing as well, and I didn't really have that. I just kinda was like, it was just kinda there. And then I'd say around middle school, high school, and even somewhat at the beginning of college, I wasn't playing a lot, I just wasn't doing a lot. I did have a Nintendo, what was it called? A Nintendo Advance, like DS, the one that would, like, flip open?
Okay,
I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
so. But I was playing a lot of, like, Spyro. I was playing, I'm actually mainly Spyro, that's all my growing up
Nice.
was.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I kinda dipped out of it.
Did you like the remake of Spyro, by the way? Have you played it yet?
I have it.
Oh,
I have it, and I started playing it recently. My friend got a code, and he was like, "I don't want
nice.
this," and I was like, "Oh, rude, give it to me." Um
I will take it.
I will take it. I mean, I feel like Spyro though is one of those things similar to gosh, I mean some of the other, maybe even Crash Bandicoot and stuff like that. I feel like Spyro is one of those games that you definitely had to play as a kid. It's kind of weird to get
Yeah.
into as an adult, I feel. I don't know, cuz I don't want to call it childish, but it is a little, I feel like it appeals to a younger audience in a way, but I love it because it is a nostalgic thing for me. But I kind of dipped out of video games for a little while, and then in college got back
Mhm.
into it because I was in college at like one of those, I feel, prime times of video games. I graduated high school in 2013. That's when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, and BioShock Infinite
Mhm.
and Outlast and all these just cool games, and The Last of Us. Hell, one of my that was rude of me. Listen to that last. Um, but, yeah, I dipped out for a little while, and then I got back into it because some friends were big gamers, and Call of Duty Zombies, oh my god, I was up all night. There was actually my college dorm freshman year, there was a guy who trusted everyone enough. I was in a really small dorm, I went to a fairly small college in North Carolina, and this guy actually
Mhm.
left his Xbox in the lobby of the dorm and had just his
Oh
Grand
my
Theft Auto
gosh.
5, disc in it, and you could come play it at any time, and my insomnia was I was playing that at 3, 4 in the morning just with some friends, and oh man, I
Nice.
miss college. College was a good time.
Those are reminding me a lot of my times in college as well. Like in one of my friends' rooms, they had Modern Warfare 3, if I can talk. They had that on his Xbox 360, and like there were three of us who would basically cycle through the game nonstop. It's like
Mhm.
I would get back from classes in the morning, play for a few hours, I would leave, do a class, my other friend would
Oh,
come
yeah.
in and do the same thing, and it's just constantly running.
It's a good time.
What was it about zombies that kind of appealed to you? Because I feel like there's a crowd that loves zombies, and then there's a crowd that's
Mhm.
like, I don't give a crap about that.
It's weird. I mean, I've always been it's weird. I've something I guess my parents also kinda raised me with is, like, the supernatural, I guess. Like, I grew up watching a lot of ghost adventure and ghost hunter shows, and I just
Mhm.
love that kinda stuff, and my parents do too. They love, like, the, Halloween and fall and all the spookiness, and, I've got some people in my family who are witches and stuff like that, and it's something that I've always been into, and my dad and I would watch The Walking Dead early on. Like, we fell out of that
Yeah.
because it got out of control in my opinion, but, um yeah, I don't know, I just kind of grew up in an environment where that was, like, always super appreciated, and just, like, the creepiness and the unknown and the supernatural, all that, it's just, like was just so accepted in my family, and it was just so cool, and
Yeah.
so I grew up just super fascinated with zombies because it's one of the, like, movies like 28 Weeks or 28 Days Later and stuff like that, or, like, Quarantine or Record or stuff like that, like, I love those movies because it's one of those things where you're like, could this happen?" Like, could this actually like, oh my god, like, I feel like at this point, we're gonna get to as a society, we're gonna get to a point where we're so prepared because of all the of all the movies and the the media that has given us this amazing content. I don't know, zombies were just fascinating to me. I was super into the 28 Days, 28 Weeks Later zombies because of how fast they were. Like, that
Oh
just
my gosh,
freaked me
yeah.
out. Like, those guys run. Walking Dead, they're kinda slower even though they're in, like, hordes or whatnot. I don't know, it was just always kind of something I grew up interested in because my parents were, I think.
Yeah, those movies, I remember watching those, I think freshman year at in college, and I wasn't a horror fan then, and I'm still not really now, but, like, my friend was like, "Oh, you should watch these movies," and I remember them being like, they leave you at the very end with for me, it was just like this pit in my stomach, it's like, "Oh, shit,
Mhm.
what if this happened?" Kinda like what you're saying, and isn't there a 3rd one of those supposed to come out, 28 years later? Is that what it was supposed
I
to
would
be?
love for it to. I'm not
I
sure. I
heard
mean,
rumors, but maybe not, I don't know.
it's been a rumor, and I feel like people have been wanting it, especially I personally love 28 Weeks Later more than I love 28 Days Later. I don't know
Mhm.
why, but I would love for a continuation of that. I've seen some fan-made trailers and whatnot too, and it looks so cool. I'm all about it.
Yeah, totally. What was it on the Game Boy Color that you liked to play? Are there any specific games that come to mind, or it was just like, that was the console you always had with you?
I remember there being I actually pulled it out of it's in a box at my parents' house in North Carolina. It's with some of the other handheld devices that we had growing up. I think the Game Boy Color, I remember playing a lot of Barbie games. I feel like I had a lot of Barbie games. I truthfully don't remember a lot of the games I had on it. I definitely remember having Spyro and whatnot. I remember there was, like, a Barbie Secret Agent game.
I've heard, some interesting things about those Barbie games. They sound like they're pretty good. They should maybe bring some of
I
those
love
back.
them.
Who knows?
I love them. They're a good time.
So what is it that gaming looks like for you currently? Now that you've kinda come up through all those things, and what's it look like for you, especially as someone who does a podcast about gaming, does YouTube videos?
Yeah, I've always been interested in super heavy story-driven games, and that may
Mhm.
be because of my film background, but, um, I mean, yeah, The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. I'm really digging Control right now, like, stuff that just has really intricate stories, but also somewhat simplistic. So, I mean, that was something that I learned in college too, where you just have, like, a really simple story, but complex characters. And when you boil down some of these games, it is just like, oh, you're just taking a girl to somebody else across the country. Like, you're just going on an adventure with this girl, taking her across the country. Or, and I don't know if you've played Control yet. It's, just someone looking for their sibling. And it's like these super simple stories that just have like these amazing complex characters built around them. And I don't know. I'm really intrigued by I mean, of course, every game has a story in a way. I mean, I'm sure
Mhm.
Tetris does to some extent, but, it's interesting because I just the ones that have, like, this super unexpected ending, like,
Yeah.
BioShock or Limbo or something like that, like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of my games and I'm just trying to, like, figure it out. I mean, I'm really interested in the Uncharted series, of course, but I'm also a really big horror, game fan. I love that kind of stuff, and it's something I didn't get into truthfully until recently. I mean, I played some stuff growing up, but like Outlast was really the kicker for me around 2013, 2014 in college when I had some friends like you have to play this game or Slender Man, like we were big into that as well. And it's an experience that it's scary almost every time. Like no matter how many times I play it, it's still
Mhm.
going to give me those goosebumps and it's still going to give me chills. And I just like Resident Evil 7. I loved Resident Evil 7. In the middle of
Mhm.
Resident Evil 2, the remake right now, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff I still haven't played as well. Like I get really embarrassed sometimes when I talk about my backlog, but we'll ignore that. What were you saying though?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it's so impactful when you play those games as a group because I had a similar experience like with Slender Man. We would do these, we called them Fright Nights in college, where we'd boot up a horror game and just everyone would pack into this one little room. And I think it's cool seeing that games are kind of embracing that now as well, horror
Mm,
games.
mm-hmm.
I think it was like Man of Medan. If I'm pronouncing that right, is it Medan or Medan? I don't know,
I think
but
it's Medan. I enjoyed it.
okay. Yeah, and I heard that they added like a mode where you could pass and kind of like it's built in where you can pass and play the controller type thing. And so
Yeah.
I think it's cool. It's cool seeing that they're embracing that whole setup of like this is a good genre to play with friends where you're all just freaking out in this dark room over this
Yeah, we
horror
did that
game.
on my YouTube channel.
That's awesome. Yeah. What how did you like Man of Medan compared to what was the other game
Until
they
Dawn.
did? Oh man. Until Dawn. Yeah. How
Yeah.
have you played Until Dawn or what did you think of it compared to that?
Until Dawn was a lot of fun. I remember playing that in college as well, and, I remember, of course, first time playing it, you're like, "I wanna save everybody," and then now I'm hoping to play it again soon where I'm trying to kill everybody, and I think you can do it. It's really dark and twisted. Man of Medan was a lot of fun. I did play it for my YouTube channel, and I did play the couch mode or whatever it's called. I did have 4 girlfriends come over, and I called it slumber party mode where we all got to pass the controller around and have a good time, and it was a lot of fun. I feel like the length of Man of Medan made a lot more sense than Until Dawn. Until Dawn was a little lengthy, and it took a lot of time to get into it because there was a lot of
Mm,
characters that you had to develop at the beginning, and Man of Medan was only 5 characters. Um,
gotcha.
I do I love them both equally. They're both really fun games to play, and there's just so much replay value in it. I am excited to see, I believe it's called Dark Pictures or something like that, but the anthology that's coming up with Man of Medan was a lot of fun, but Little Hope, which is their next addition into it, it looks so cool. It looks like it's got some voodoo and some
Yeah.
witchcraft and some crazy stuff going on, and it's I have a friend of mine who writes for television, and he knows so many people in the industry. It's crazy, but his friend is the one who wrote Until Dawn and was working on
Oh,
these as
cool.
well. And I think they said that like Little Hope was like their favorite one yet. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that, but I'm gonna say it allegedly. But yeah, I'm
Allegedly.
excited. I'm excited for all that, and I think it's a really interesting take on horror games, like the whole decision
Yeah.
based and quick time events and stuff like that. I love Man of Medan though. If you haven't played it, you definitely should.
I haven't. That's the one thing with doing a podcast about indie games specifically. I don't play as many AAA games as I want to, and
Right.
which it's hard because I like right now I have a backlog of like Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I'm trying to finish up some other games like Octopath Traveler, and there's just all these
Mm,
games I really want to get into, but
mhm.
indie games are also calling me too. So I was actually going to ask you, do you play many indie games? It sounds like you have a lot of AAA's that you love. Do you
Yeah.
play many indies, or is that kind of like maybe on a Saturday once in a while?
I do play some indie games. I guess Outlast is considered an indie game. Not, I mean, it's still a group of people up in gosh, they're somewhere in Canada. But I just started Oxenfree, and that one's a lot of fun. There's a couple that I'm really wanting to get into. There was one I was telling you about. Blasphemous
Blasphemous,
on
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Switch. Yeah, I really want to get that. And then there's another game called Phobia that I'm hoping to get into. It's very similar to Limbo, side scroller. Two different endings too, which is cool. Um,
That is
Other
cool.
than that, it's mainly AAA stuff. Yeah, it is. It truly is mainly AAA stuff, unless a friend or somebody that made something like a buddy of mine, he created the indie horror game, which is just a demo right now, but it's called Nemesis, and I played it on my YouTube channel, and I actually currently hold the world record for the speedrun of that game. I'm just gonna brag about that really
Nice.
quick. But he's working on the full game, and I'm on his Patreon page. Like he's awesome, and I really recommend it if you haven't played it or heard of it. Check out my YouTube channel; it'll be there. It's run on my poor PC. The poor guy is just begging me to shoot it.
What is that game about?
Nemesis is interesting. It's kind of like a fever dream of somebody kind of scared of clowns, and
Oh
it's
my.
awesome if you're scared of clowns. I personally am not scared of clowns, but that game did freak me out. But no, if I've played anything indie, it's probably a horror game. Truthfully,
Have you played Little Nightmares at all? Because that
yeah,
sounds
I'm in
like
the
one that
middle of
would be
that
right up your
actually.
alley.
I am in the middle of that actually, and I'm so excited for the second one. It looks so cool. I do need to finish that game. I actually may play I was actually debating on, like, what I should play today, and I'm thinking I might continue with that because it is a good time. It is a lot of fun. It is frustrating at times, but I do really enjoy that game.
That's awesome. Yeah, I horror games scare the crap out of me because I'm a total wuss, but that I did like
Sure.
that game, so I'm interested to try the next one. So what has been, would you say, the most influential game or series for you, and kind of how has it changed who you are as a person? And I know you mentioned The Last of Us, but it may be that, it may be another one. Like, what has been the most influential, and how has it changed you?
I would have to say the Uncharted series, because I fell out of gaming for so long, and then my parents for Christmas gifted me with the PlayStation 4 bundle of the Uncharted collection, and I beat all three of those games in like, oh my god, like 2 weeks max. Like I just blew through them, and
Oh my gosh.
I loved it, and it really is what kind of kickstarted me back into gaming and what made me want to play more and play for. I mean, also around or maybe a year later, around that time, The Last of Us Part 2 was announced and Outlast 2 was announced, and a lot of people knew that I was starting to get back into gaming a little bit more, and that's when people started saying, like, "Oh, I can't wait to see your reaction to play this." So those comments are kind of what made me want to start the YouTube channel as well, and it's just I feel like the Uncharted series is what really like got the ball rolling and got me wanting to start kind of where I am today, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'd say those games, and oh my god, I love the Uncharted games. They're so much fun. But I'd say the Uncharted collection. Those first three games were awesome.
That is cool. I've talked to people, and when I ask this question about what has been the most influential game and kind of why, it seems like a lot of people respond with the game that has got them back into gaming, because your
Yeah,
story is one that seems common among a lot of people, where it's like once you get into high school, a lot of times people fall out of gaming. It's just not the thing they're into, or they're into sports or whatever it might be. But then
right.
it's like this game that gets them back in is what stands out, because that was so impactful to kind of push them on to this journey of playing more games and doing all this other stuff. So that's cool to hear that it's the Uncharted series for you.
Hmm.
As someone who hasn't played The Last of Us, and what is it about that game that you love so much? What is it that kind of stands out to you?
Um, I have such a hard time kind of explaining. Like, I feel like when you play a video game, it's such an internal experience sometimes where you're just kind of like you love it so much, and putting it into words is kind of difficult. And you're kind of like, man, this touched me in a way
Hmm.
that I'm never going to be able to explain. But it seems like one of those stories that's so much up my alley, and it's one of those things that I wish I would have thought of sooner, or wish I would have thought of before, because it's something that I would have totally written. It's something that is just so well done, and in a world where there's so many different variations of a zombie apocalypse, and exactly how the world's going to end, and how we approach it, and some people call this cliche, some people, I have no issues with people not liking The Last of Us. It's totally fine. It's not for everyone, absolutely, but
Hmm. Yeah.
it's just one of those stories that made sense to me, and it stuck with me. Like, it just is one of those stories where it brings up a lot of questions, and it kind of has an
Hmm.
ambiguous ending, so you're left with thinking and debating, and like, I mean, that game came out forever ago, but people are still talking about it, people are still like
Yeah.
questioning the morals of it, and it's so it's one of those things where it's a simple story of a guy just trying to take a girl across the country, but it's got these amazing characters in it, and you love them like your own. And I've seen some people analyze The Last of Us and say, like, Ellie in this game made me wish I had a daughter. And it's like I suddenly feel so protective of Ellie and, like, motherly in a way where I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to
Yeah.
protect her at all costs. And so yeah, I mean, Ellie's amazing. Just those characters are amazing. You meet so many crazy people
Mhm.
along the way of this journey of these two, and it's a touching story, and I really want everyone to experience it, whether they like it or not. It's just something that you will take something from it. You will absolutely take something from it, regardless on what it is, whether it's the ending, whether it's, a little scene. It'll make you cry. It'll make you feel things. And I think that's amazing. I think a game should embrace
Mhm.
like all aspects of that, and should really make you just feel, if that makes sense. It shouldn't just be mindless shooting sometimes, even though that is fun now and again, but you need to really put yourself in a story that's going to make you think, and it's going to make you ponder, and it's going to make you want to talk about it. And there's a lot of games that
Yeah.
do that. There's definitely a lot of games that do that. The Last of Us was just such a touching, you know, game for me personally, for sure. And you have to play it.
I really need to. I still have to get a PlayStation. Maybe PlayStation 5 is like my way into playing all these old games.
Oh, absolutely. And by that point, part 2 will be out as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting that you were having kind of a hard time explaining what it is about the game that touched you, because I feel like there's always that game for gamers, or at least for me, where it's like there's something about this that just changed you, or something about the way it brought these emotions about. Like one of those games for me was What Remains of Edith Finch, where it's like
Oh, yeah.
it brings you to tears. It's like it affects you in a way, but it's hard to explain that to people who haven't experienced that. And maybe they've still experienced that game, but they didn't experience it in the same way. So I totally get
Yeah.
the difficulty of, like, it's hard to explain that to people, and it's just something you have to experience for yourself and see if it kind of affects you in the same way.
I love that game.
It's an amazing game. So, what is it that you'd say is the most important aspect of a game to you? And I feel like you've sort of answered this, but it would be interesting to hear more about it. It sounds to me like the most important aspect for you is generally story. Is that true? And kind of what about it is so important?
I mean, story is a big part of it. I think everything has to be balanced, though. I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting, yeah, because at the end of it, it's still a video game, so therefore it needs to still have, some of the combat that I'm looking for, some of the crafting, and it can be uneven at times. So I'm actually a big fan of The Evil Within 2 currently. I mean, I love the first one too, but I'm in the middle of the second one, and while the story is kind of weird in that game, it's kind of all over the place in my opinion, but it's still fun. I think what's great about that game is actually the combat and the weapons and crafting and all that. So it kind of just depends. I mean, every game has their strong point. I'm not going in necessarily looking straight for the story. I'm going in just to
Hmm.
see what the game has to offer. And if I see that the story's lacking a little bit and it's not grabbing my attention, it's like, okay, but this game has a really cool crafting mechanism, and it's got a really cool it just feels good when I play it, like the controller vibrates perfectly or something, like that. And
Yeah.
it kind of just depends. I mean, I don't go in necessarily looking for the story, even though I am intrigued to see what it has to tell. But if you're playing a game like, if you start off Limbo and you go in looking for the story, you're going to be like, well, have you played Limbo?
I have it in my library. I have not played it. I've seen it
Yeah.
played, but I haven't played it myself.
I've seen it played. I started playing it a while ago, but I never finished, but I forgot how it ends, so I'm excited to get back into it. I may even replay it again for the channel. But it's one of those games where it's, like, confusing at first, and you don't really know what's going on, so it's hard to say, like, "Oh, I'm going
Hmm.
in for the story," because you'd give up on a lot of games, I feel, if you
Yeah,
go in just
totally.
looking for the story, because a lot of them it takes some time to get into. So it's just like a mix of things. I mean, I just kinda have to see what is this game trying to tell me? What is happening? What is going on? Not necessarily story-wise, but just, like, I don't know, what's happening? Like, what are you
Yeah.
trying to tell me? And then go from there. Like, atmosphere is big too. I mean, yeah, I think every game catches my eye in a different way, and it's not necessarily story. So I don't really have, like, a solid answer for you. It's just kinda like, whatever happens, whatever comes to me first.
It totally depends on what type of game you're playing and what you're feeling at the time. Like what kind of game are you wanting to play at that very moment? Like it might not be a heavy story game. It might be just shooting people in Call of Duty or something.
Right.
Are there specific genres that speak to you, or is it just kind of I obviously horror is something you really like, things like The Last of Us, but are there
Yeah.
genres you kind of find yourself leaning into the most?
I mean, horror always catches my eye first. I'm always intrigued by the next horror game that's coming out. But also just like if it looks really cool, I'm down.
Hmm.
You know, it's gotta have something to catch my attention, but I feel like if anything, I'm looking more into the horror games.
Totally. So people who like horror games intrigue me because I'm such a wuss, and it's like what about a horror game makes it scary for you? Like what is it that kind of sets it over from being just a cheesy thing that you're just laughing at?
Sometimes just I mean, jump scares will get me from time to time. I'm very easily scared, but I don't know, sometimes just like the silence. Like I'm playing like PT freaked you out, I think, as a player because it was just eerie and you weren't really sure what was gonna happen
Yeah.
and you're in a loop and you're just kinda like, "Oh my god." Like, the unknown and the suspense of the atmosphere around you is not necessarily, like, something jumping out and scaring you, it's just, like, sometimes the silence or, like, a creepy radio in the background. It's a big atmosphere is a huge thing in horror games. I mean, think of Slender Man when you're walking around in just the quiet woods and all you hear is the crunching of the leaves underneath your feet, and it's, like it's very immersive and it's like, "Oh god, what's gonna happen to me?" But, I think it just depends on, I don't know, it's I started playing Visage, I don't really know how to say it, recently on my PC, but it's kinda hard, I my poor PC is just it needs so much love and
Oh
attention
no.
right now, but, trying to play it is a challenge in itself, but that game is just creepy because you're going through this massive house and it's just so quiet and you don't know what's gonna happen to you, but yeah, I don't know, it's weird. I love horror games. They're just so unexpected at times.
Yeah, atmosphere is just so huge. It's for the ones that I have played, a lot of times it really is the atmosphere that's more scary than the actual monster. It's like
Yeah.
or whatever you're fighting or trying to run away from. Because like once you see it, it's kind of like the moment's lost because it's like, oh, okay, that's not that scary usually. But the lead
Right.
up where it's like you go into a room with some flickering lights or there's a creepy noise in the background, like all these different things that just kind of get you on edge.
I think I mentioned that on my Visage playthrough where I was like, "I just want something to scare me already so I could be, like, over it and just run through this house so I know what's coming, because nothing's jumped out at me yet. I'm
Yeah.
just freaked out because this house is creepy and things are creaking." It's like, "Oh god, I just want something to scare me already." Jeez.
Totally. I like that you mentioned BioShock multiple times. That was a series I love that I mean, a lot of people love that series. It was such a great combination of this, immersive sim first person shooter, but also like brought in
Yeah.
these horror elements like in some of those areas where you're going and it's quiet and then one of those I forgot what they're called, what the monsters were called, but they like jump out from they have the hooks on their hands or whatever and they jump down
Splicers.
on you. The splicers, thank you. Yeah, that
Yeah.
those games were just so, so amazing.
Oh, yeah, those are fun. I actually left my Xbox at my ex-boyfriend's house whenever we were dating. I left it there, and I went and bought him BioShock on the Xbox, and I was like, "You play this. You need to sit here and play
Nice.
this," and he loved it. He beat it in, like, 3 days, and I was like, "I know what I'm talking about, or give me my Xbox back, but you gotta play BioShock, if anything." Like, I tell people that whenever they're like, "I'm getting into gaming, what should I play?" And I'm like, "Okay, listen, BioShock is where it's at."
So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about what podcasting and YouTubing looks like for you. What you kind of mentioned earlier a little bit about what got you into it, but what kind of pushed you to do those things and what's been your experience so far doing those?
I really got into it because I'm actually really big fans of the Kinda Funny, games guys up in San
Oh yeah.
Francisco. They're awesome, and they inspire me all the time, and they're really part of the inspiration as to why I do this today, but also just because I had a lot of friends tell me, like, "I love seeing your reaction to stuff," or, "I wanna see your reaction to this game, you gotta play this," and it's interesting because it feels like I loved watching Let's Plays too. Like Markiplier had a huge part of it as well, where it's like I loved watching
Mhm.
people play The Last of Us just so I could see their reaction and I can know like I know how they're feeling and it's so I think playing a game if they're genuine about it, right? If their Let's Player is actually genuine and they haven't played the game before, just seeing that raw reaction to like a video game and knowing how that
Yeah.
feels, it's like, oh, it's so amazing. I love every part of it. I do it just to share that experience with fans and with viewers and it's a good time and the podcast kind of came to be because a good friend of mine, Peter or Pajamo, as I've mentioned him on the podcast before, he's on there all the time,
Mhm.
frequent flyer Pajamo. We would go hang out with friends and all we would do is talk about video games and somebody one day was like, y'all should record this and we were like,
Yeah.
maybe we should. And so it kind of came to be from there. And I was really hoping for it to be like a news segment type thing, kind of like the kind of funny guys do. And I was like, oh, maybe we could talk
Mhm.
about what's happening. And I was like, no, I feel like it's better if we just like chat like we normally would. Like it feels less strict and less, tense. It's like, oh, let's just have a conversation. There just happens to be a microphone recording us. It's like it's a good time, and I love the podcast. It's fun. I just try and work around my crazy schedule to make them both happen. And Saturdays, typically, I'm trying to record as much as I can and trying to get as much done because I do have a fun 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 desk job that
Mhm.
I do love, but it that does take up all my time, and I dedicate a lot of time to that, of course. And so, yeah, I try and make it work, and it's one of those things, kind of like I was talking about earlier, where I feel like I've done a lot in my life to constantly impress other people, and I feel like playing video games for the internet like I do, it's like, this is the first thing that I've genuinely done for myself, and I'm not trying to impress anybody, and I'm not trying to make anyone else happy. It makes me happy. It takes away a lot of my anxiety doing it, and it's always nice to have people respond positively to that and say like, "Hey, having a rough day, listening to your podcast earlier or watching one of your YouTube videos and it really helped, make me laugh or something." Like that's just like the most rewarding thing is to know it's not just for selfish reasons that I'm doing this, but no, it's a fun time and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's something I was talking with I had a guy named Paul on the podcast from Region Free Gamers podcast a little while back, and he was kind of mentioning a
Mhm.
similar thing, and we were talking about how just the creative process is something so rewarding and so enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so I can totally relate to that in terms of like when I'm doing the podcast, it just feels it's obviously it's nice to get more followers and more listeners and all that sort of stuff, but it's also just
Sure.
such an enjoyable thing for me because you're creating something that you enjoy, you're playing games that you enjoy, and that's awesome to hear that you've found the podcast and doing the let's plays as something super rewarding for yourself. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I love it.
So, we've gotten to one of the most important questions of the show now. This is where you, Patches, get to pitch a game to Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft. They're all currently on the Skype chat with us. You just can't hear them. They're they're
Uh-huh.
they're chittering in the background, and
Yeah.
they want to hear your dream mashup game. So here's how it
Oh
works.
man.
They don't have a lot of time, so you get to pitch them a character, a protagonist, a weapon, a location, a genre, and a soundtrack. And all of these things can be from other games, they can be from movie lore if you'd prefer, but you have to pitch them this game. So, are you prepared for the challenge? There's millions of dollars on the line right now.
Okay, well now I'm nervous.
No pressure at all. So, we'll start with character and we'll go one by one. So, who would be your protagonist?
And it can be made up or it can be from a game.
Yeah, it can be either way. If you'd like to make up a character, you can. If you want it from another game, that's great too.
I mean, of course, I'd love to sit here and be like, well, let me make my protagonist Ellie and let me make her the badass of the story. And I'm like, wait, that game is coming out.
You can totally do that though. You can do an alternate Ellie, like an alternate Ellie world if you want.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah, let me put 19-year-old Last of Us Part 2 Ellie.
Okay. What would the weapon be? So we'll go next with the weapon. What weapon would she have? And she can have any weapon in gaming lore in any lore. So she could be going in there with like an energy sword or something if you want.
I gotta say, if I'm in any video game, typically my go-to is the shotgun because it always just
Mhm.
gives the best feedback. And
Yeah.
I love updating the shotgun and make it, because it's typically just like one hit kill, like you're good, like you don't need to stress too much about it. And ammo is not as frequent as handgun ammo, but I love shotguns in games. So she's gonna have a shotgun.
Okay. Where is this game going to be set? What's the location?
I've always been curious to see what abandoned Los Angeles would look like, which is
Ooh.
kind of, I guess, why I liked Fear the Walking Dead so much too, was because it was like where I am. But no, I think that'd be really interesting to have like a really just gross, deserted Los Angeles.
Would it be like current day Los Angeles that's deserted, or would it be like an older Los Angeles, if you get what I'm saying?
I'd say current day. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I don't know. Has that been done in a video game?
No, I don't think so.
That'd be really cool. So what would be your genre? You have Ellie with a shotgun in abandoned Los Angeles. What would be the genre of the game?
Horror. You gotta go horror.
Ooh, that would be interesting. What? Okay, so what kind of monsters or things are are they still zombies, or would you add, I guess if you're going with zombies, what would you add in to the horror element of this game?
You know what I really liked was a game called Dying Light, where they had different zombies that would come out at nighttime. And I've always been
Hmm.
intrigued by that sort of thing. I've
Yeah.
always been, I mean, just because it adds a different element and constant scare where not only you're worrying about zombies all the time, but you're also worrying about stuff that comes out at night. And I would want to throw in a supernatural aspect to it, of course, and throw in some crazy shit here and there. But I think just zombies for now. We'll just go zombies for now, but
Okay,
add like a nighttime creep factor.
I like it. And then if you have a soundtrack, what is there any soundtrack that stands out to you that would be perfect for this game?
I would want like a really badass female lead singer that's like, it's kind of creepy and eerie in a way. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't, not someone that specifically that comes to mind, but like a really interesting, creepy but female lead. It's like the worst answer. I don't know. Like it'd be something like that.
I'll talk with Sony after this. It looks like they're writing up some proposals for this game, but I'll get back to you on what they think of it, but I like it. So to kind of round out the show, I've been doing these things called rapid fire interviews. Maybe some podcasts you've listened to do it. I really take a lot of inspiration from the Game Informer show, and Ben Hansen on there does these rapid fire interviews, and I just like the speed of them, and I like how it's an interview form where it's like, okay, I ask a question and it's quick answers. So are you willing to go on this rapid fire interview journey with me,
Yes, of
Patches?
course. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So, first question, who is your dream interviewee for the Patches Plays Games podcast?
Neil Druckmann.
Okay. What is your guilty pleasure game? Like the game that you go back to but you don't want to tell people about, if there is one.
I mean, I play Outlast all the time. I don't really believe in guilty pleasures. I think you should enjoy whatever you enjoy.
That's a good perspective. Okay, I like that. What's one of your favorite non-gaming hobbies?
What can I legally talk about? No, I'm just kidding. Um,
We both live in on the West Coast, so I mean,
yeah. Yeah. um, I'm a really big spender. Like, I love shopping. It's really bad. But I'm also just big into socializing and hanging out with friends. It's a huge, I don't know if you consider that a hobby, but it's a big, definite thing I need in my life.
totally. On a scale of 1 to 100 Kojimas, how would you rate your personal enjoyment with peeing mechanics in video games?
It's like a it's like a
So,
70 it's like a
so,
75 because I'm like, okay, let's see what this is about, but it's also weird.
it is weird. Okay, 75 Kojimas. I guess we'll find out once Death Stranding actually comes out.
No, that's so soon.
How intense it is so soon. How intense that mechanic actually is. What genre of games can you not seem to get good at?
It's just like really difficult games like Bloodborne or Sekiro or something like that. Like something that just really takes a lot of effort. I don't know what, just super action fighting games, I guess, or not even fighting, but just those really difficult. I would love to be able to play those and get into those and enjoy those.
Dark Souls type games are just they're brutal. They feel so bad if you're not able to kind of reach that cap of skill to kind of work through them.
Yeah.
Um, okay, this is I crafted a lot of like really complicated questions for you, so I'm sorry. Thank you for bearing with me.
Oh, I'm all about it.
Would you rather have every video game NPC ever, like in every single video game, replaced with Atreus from God of War, or would you prefer to have every driving sequence in games beyond Rainbow Road? Like every driving sequence, like in Grand Theft Auto and whatever you're doing.
I think that would be hilarious, so I'll go with the Rainbow Road.
I think it would be hilarious until you keep falling off the damn edge of that map. I
True.
hate that.
Well,
I
that
hate
would
that
be
one.
fun. That would be funny as well.
It would be. Okay. Disneyland or Six Flags?
Six Flags. Yeah, I'm one of
Fair
those
choice.
people. Haha.
What's one gaming pet peeve that you have?
Annoying NPCs.
Okay, that ties hand in hand with Atreus. That's fair.
I'm sorry, everyone.
It's okay. That's fine that you were annoyed by him. I heard he was quite annoying. Anyways,
The worst.
what's one incredibly popular game that you couldn't get into?
I mean, Borderlands to an extent. I really couldn't get into that.
That's interesting. What about it wasn't appealing to you?
I think the art of it just kind of messed with me a little bit. I have a hard time reading like comic books sometimes, and I feel like it just had like it kind of hurts my head
Yeah.
where it's like super thick outline artwork, and it kind of messes with me a little bit. I feel like that might have been it.
All right, one more really complicated question for you. If you could only play 2 games for the rest of your life, but the catch is that the sum of their Metacritic ratings could only equal 100. So like you could have 2 50s on the Metacritic scale, or you could have like a 70 and a 30. What scores would you shoot for?
And that's the only 2 games I could play.
Only 2 games.
Let me go 90-10.
90-10. I like it. You would just kind of put up with the 10 game just so you could have this amazing 90 experience. That's fair. Okay, second to last question. What Switch Lite color is the best?
Yellow. It's my favorite color.
I agree. That's a good one. Okay, last question. Where can people find you?
Oh, where can people find me? I am everywhere. And so you can find me on Instagram at Patches Plays Games. You can find me on Twitter at Patches Plays. And if you enjoy Let's Plays, head on over to youtube.com/Patches Plays Games. And if you do want to check out the podcast, it is available on all podcast platforms or soundcloud.com/Play More Games Podcast. Just search Play More Games and it should be there. It's got a pretty interesting little logo to it. It just says Play More Games. I am on Facebook as well, but no need to find me over there. If you want to get a hold of me, DM me on either Twitter or Instagram. But yeah, mainly on Instagram, mainly on YouTube. Come hang out. Or patreon.com/Patches Plays Games if you want to support me there too.
Well, Patches, thanks so much for joining me on the show and kind of dealing with my incredibly complicated questions. So I
Oh, I
appreciate
loved
you
it.
taking your time out of the day.
Thank you. I
Awesome.
loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks also to the rest of you for listening to this week's Roundtable episode. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in game.